The Australian Cup round of 32 is done and dusted, and this has been one of the most exciting last couple of weeks in Australia Cup history. These 16 matches that we've seen over the last few weeks have provided us with some shocking results, some interesting talking points, and the discovery of some exciting teams who I think could really go far in this year's edition of the Australia Cup. First of all, looking at the results from Matchday 1, Avondale 5, Stirling Macedonia 1, a 9-0 win for Nunawading City over Darwin Olympic, and Peninsula Power hosting Western Sydney Wanderers. Wanderers were strong in that game with a 3-0 win. First of all, we do have to address that huge win for Nunawading City up there in the Northern Territory. 9-0. It's the biggest ever win we've seen in the final rounds of the Australia Cup. And Darwin Olympic, they were reduced to 10 plays in that first half, and that certainly affected things. But a 9-0 scoreline, just incredible. And again, when you consider that Nunawading are from the third tier of Victorian football, it is quite a dramatic result. So we will put the magnifying glass on Western Sydney Wanderers. The A-League team picked up an impressive 3-0 win against Queensland side Peninsula Power. Bajadar Kraev with 2 goals in the first half. Costa Barbarouses scoring on his debut for Western Sydney Wanderers as well. Looking at the stats here from FOTMob, Wanderers bossing possession, 64% there. Wanderers also managed 16 shots, the 11 for Peninsula Power. And there were a couple of moments for Power there, getting forward on the counter-attack. They did look dangerous at times, but overall I was impressed with the way Wanderers handled this game. It's always interesting looking at the lineups that we see from the A-League teams so early on in pre-season. There were a number of debuts for Western Sydney. Barbarouses, as mentioned up top, Ali Kowal was also there making his starting debut for Western Sydney Wanderers. It was a pretty full-strength lineup, and that is a thing that we did see mostly. We'll talk about that later. But in regards to the team sheets that we did see from the A-League teams, there wasn't too much rotation. There were strong squads amongst many of the clubs. I think this lineup will be pretty similar to what we see from Western Sydney come round 1 in the A-League men's season. And I was really impressed with some of the combination play. Barbarouses and Kowal were sort of drifting across that front line, combining well with the likes of Hammond and Kraev. Kraev there with the 2 goals, very impressive. Almost got the hat-trick as well, missing from the penalty spot. Bajadar Kraev, but a very, very strong performance first up for Western Sydney. Jumping into Matchday 2, Adelaide Croatia Raiders were hosting Cooks Hill United. A 3-2 win for Cooks Hill there. Heidelberg United defeating Western Bears 2-0. Sydney United 58 defeated Northern Tigers in an all-Sydney matchup there. And South Melbourne travelling to South Hobart, winning 2-1. First of all, a really big result there for Cooks Hill United. We don't often see teams from Northern New South Wales make a deep run into the Australia Cup. Cooks Hill United have a great opportunity here. That big win against Adelaide Croatia Raiders, a couple of really nice goals scored in that game as well. But South Melbourne, man, I mean, they aren't necessarily having the strongest season in NPL Victoria this time around, but as we know, they made it to the semi-finals of the Australia Cup last year. I'm sure they'll be wanting to go one better this time around as well. Brennan and Bernardo with the goals in the first half for them, but we have to highlight the goal from Kemp in that first half. That insane bicycle kick, one of the greatest goals we've ever seen in Australia Cup history. And then we had an all A-Leagues matchup on Sunday afternoon. It went to penalties. Wellington Phoenix defeating Perth Glory on penalties, 7-8 in the shootout. It was 1-1 after extra time. A dramatic match too. The weather was crazy. It started out with heavy rain. The sun was out, and then there was a delay towards the end of the match due to lightning in the area. Kelly Hild opening the scoring for Wellington Phoenix before Adam Taggart equalised just before the 90th minute. Looking at the stats from this game from FOTMob, Perth Glory with 17 shots overall, Wellington Phoenix with 15. Again, Glory dominating a lot of possession. Phoenix, this is what we saw a lot from them last season. They don't have a lot of the ball, and it was the same thing here, just 36% possession in the end. Yes, they were doing a lot of defending, especially in that second half of regular time, with Perth Glory chasing the equaliser in this game. Looking at the lineups for both sides, again, maybe a couple key players missing here and there. Wellington Phoenix especially having to field plenty of young players. You had the likes of Sloane Rodriguez and Brooke Smith. They were both looking dangerous in that front third for Wellington Phoenix. Again, we saw Wellington playing mostly with that back 3, so that may well be what we see again from them this season. For Perth Glory, there were debuts for the likes of Scott Wooden and Sam Sutton, former Wellington Phoenix players. Callum Timmins back at the club as well. And it was the 2 youngsters leading the line, Arian Soleimani and Nathaniel Blair. Adam Taggart coming off the bench to score for Perth Glory. Matchday 4 was, I think, undoubtedly the most entertaining match day of the round of 32. Look at these results, man. Auckland FC 4-0 win over Gold Coast Knights. Macarthur FC 5, SD Raiders 0. A 1-0 win for Sydney FC away to Western United. And surely the result of the cup so far. Olympic Kingsway 4, Melbourne Victory 3. We certainly have to highlight this match. Looking at Melbourne Victory, first of all, you will notice how this is a very, very strong lineup for Melbourne Victory here. A number of their stars featuring in this game. Valadon, Machash was there, Virgos leading the line, Miranda and Jackson at the back. This was was a strong lineup for Melbourne Victory, and they got defeated in the end by Olympic Kingsway, the NPL team from Western Australia. What a fantastic result for the team from WA. It was a real back and forth game. Looking at the goals that were scored, Valadon 23rd minute, Oxborough from the penalty spot just a few minutes later. You had Jelicic, who gave Victory the lead before half time. Hobson with the equaliser. Piscopo came off the bench and scored late on, and that looked like the winner for Melbourne Victory. Of course, they had that red card in the 79th minute as well, Melbourne Victory, so they were reduced to 10 players. But then Liam Boland, the greatest goal scorer when it comes to the Australia Cup final rounds, entering the match and completely turned things around, scoring in the 4th minute of added time and then scoring from the penalty spot in extra time to win it for Kingsway. What a player and what an impact for Kingsway. But it's just really concerning that seeing the way that Melbourne Victory let their lead slip on numerous occasions, 3 times throughout this match. Look, the red card certainly does impact things, and they were a bit of a mess at the back there. Melbourne Victory, Keegan Jelicic was dropping back to play in a left-back position. We know that Keegan Jelicic isn't a defender, so it was a bit of a mess there in defence for Melbourne Victory. But credit to Olympic Kingsway, and this result should give Kingsway a lot of confidence going ahead in the Cup moving forward. Auckland and Macarthur, very impressive, obviously, in their games. Big score lines there, but Auckland and Macarthur were both fielding strong lineups. A number of new signings starring for Macarthur, the likes of Talbot, Politidis, Caceres as well. A goal and assist for Anthony Caceres. He was very impressive on his Bulls debut. And then in the final match day, Apia Leichhardt 2, Melbourne City 0. Brisbane City defeating Olympic FC in an all-Brisbane matchup there. Canberra, Croatia were hosting Metro Stars, but a big 4-0 win for the team from South Australia. And then an all A-League matchup there, 2-1 to Newcastle Jets over Adelaide United. I first of all want to talk about Apia Leichhardt with that 2-0 win over Melbourne City. You look at that result, just if you hadn't seen the match or the team sheets and you think, wow, what a big cup set there as well. Another big cup set. But Melbourne City, we have to talk about their lineup. We know Melbourne City have produced some fantastic players in their time, and they've got, one of the best academies in the competition. But looking at their lineup here, it was just a real shock. So many young players in their lineup. I think I read that they didn't have a player over the age of 23 in their lineup. It was such a youthful lineup. And just based off what we saw on paper, it felt like Apia Leichhardt were the favourites. Melbourne City being the travelling team in this game, Apia Leichhardt just with more experience overall. So it's not necessarily surprising that the result did turn out the way it did in the end, a 2-0 win. I mean, you see Max Caputo leading the line there. That was the thing. Max Caputo in this lineup, he was the only player who started the A-League Grand Final a few months ago. So look, a great opportunity to give youngsters a chance, but this is just clear outlier compared to what we saw from the other A-League teams. Comparing it to City's rivals, Melbourne Victory, we look at that Victory lineup and how strong was that lineup, man. So many experienced players. Maybe part of the thinking for City head coach Aurelia Vidmar was the fact that they've got the Asian Champions League Elite coming up in just a couple months' time. It's going to be a big campaign coming up with a lot of travel, juggling the A-League and the Asian Champions League Elite. Opted to go with the youngsters in this game, and unfortunately for City, it didn't work out in the end. And the other result we should highlight is that all A-League matchup, Newcastle Jets 2, Adelaide United 1. This was an interesting game because we had 2 new head coaches, Mark Milligan in charge of the Jets, Ayrton Andrioli in charge of Adelaide United. The Jets playing this game up in Maitland, getting the win in the end. Gibson and Battolato with the goals. Goal on debut for Alex Battolato. And we look at that lineup for Newcastle Jets. A few youngsters in the lineup, but there were debuts for Battolato. Max Burgess back at Newcastle Jets as well. James Delianov in goals, former Adelaide goalkeeper as well. Adelaide United, though, they will be disappointed with this result. You look at their lineup and it's overall quite a strong team, but I'm sure both head coaches would have learned a lot from this game in the end. So that's our recap of the round of 32, and we have already had the draw for the round of 16, and there are some truly incredible matchups on the way for the round of 16 in a couple of weeks' time. We'll be doing a dedicated predictions preview video here on the channel, so make sure you're subscribed so you don't miss that one. But let's have a quick look at the matchups. South Melbourne hosting Auckland FC. That's a big one already. Sydney United 58 hosting Sydney FC for a derby match there. That'll be a great one. Those two teams have met in the Australia Cup previously as well. Nunawading from the third tier of Victorian football hosting Wellington Phoenix. Huge occasion there for Nunawading City. Heidelberg United, the top team in NPL Victoria at the moment, hosting Western Sydney Wanderers. That's a big game as well. All these games are big games, dude. You've got Avondale hosting Apia Leichhardt, 2 Australian Championship teams there. Brisbane City will be playing Olympic Kingsway. So looking at that corner of the bracket, we are guaranteed to get an NPL club in the semi-finals this year. Cooks Hill United hosting Newcastle Jets. Again, another big one. A Newcastle derby there. Cooks Hill United. What an occasion for them. hosting the local A-League team. And Metro Stars taking on Macarthur FC, of course, the Bulls, the reigning Australia Cup winners. What were your main takeaways from the Australia Cup round of 32? Join the conversation in the comments section and say subscribe so you don't miss our Australia Cup content here on the channel. My name's Lockie, and I'll see you in the next one.